Hey guys, it's Spees. I just thought I would just make a fun list ranking the end bosses to each WoW expansion that's been out so far. And can you believe there's 9 of them? I think it's nine. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We have 9 expansions that are complete, with Dragonflight being the 10th. So let's go back and look at them all. And I'm going to rank them not only based on the lore behind them, from the previous um, real time strategy Warcraft games, but the lore also in World of Warcraft leading up to their final boss fight. And then also the boss fight itself, how fun it was, or how much it made sense to the lore. And as you see, our rankings here are S, A, B, C, D, and spoiler alert, the jailer, which I don't know if the jailer deserves that much of a bad rap, but we'll get to it when we do. So, the first one we have is Kil'jaeden, and I don't know. My gut tells me to put him in a B or a C. I'm gonna start with B. So, the original vanilla WoW, all the end bosses in the dungeons, and including Kil'jaeden, I guess other than Cthulhu, weren't like the big bads of their factions. We faced off against Onyxia and Nefarion, who were pretty scary Black Dragon fights, but they weren't Deathwing. They weren't the big bad of the Black Dragon fights. I guess Ragnaros, the Elemental Lord. He's a big bad of the Elemental Lord, but the whole deal was he was woken up too soon executed, so he wasn't at his full power. And I feel like, and same with Cthulhu, and then we come up to the final boss of the expansion, which is just basically a major lieutenant of the Lich King, of the undead army. And then not the Lich King himself, of course, because why would we fight? At least they were saving their big name characters, but this is not a big name character. It is, really, but once again, it's not the head of the undead army. It is just a major, major lieutenant. And then the fight itself was let's be real here, all the fights in vanilla were kind of boring, at least by the time they got more later on in the expansion. The fights got a little bit better, but the Kel'Thuzad fight itself was kind of boring. You start off by standing in the middle of the room and all these mobs surround you, and you just gotta wait for the waves of mobs to come in, and it's just kind of boring. And then you just pull him in the middle of the room, and the fight against him is just kind of boring. Interrupt him if you can. Watch out for void zones, which was hard for people back in the day. I just remember people just dying to the void zones. Just like, dude, watch your feet. If something appears under it, move out of it, which is common practice in today's WoW, but back 18 years ago, when people's computers back then are probably less powerful than toasters you can buy now, it was hard to see those void zones. You know what? I've talked myself just because of the fight itself, knocking him down to a C. So next we have Kil'jaeden, which I'm going to put in the A tier, because by this point, like, Kil'jaeden, now once again, this is not Sargeras, the head of the Burning Legion, but the storyline at the time was Sargeras was kind of still missing after the events against Medivh, so Kil'jaeden and Archimonde were just leading the Burning Legion, and it was kind of a surprise that it was Mother F and Kil'jaeden, the final boss of the Burning Crusade, because all the build up to the Burning Crusade, it was all about Illidan. We're going to go against Illidan. Illidan's coming back. Oh my god, it's Illidan. And then once we killed Illidan, it's like, oh, where are we going to go to now? And of course, the Burning Legion was around doing things in the expansion, but then all of a sudden they come to the forefront and they're trying to evade again, which is, I just remember back in the day, it kind of felt like it was out of nowhere, because even though they were doing stuff in Outlands, I didn't get, like, of course the Burning Legion coming back is always a threat. But then it was just like, oh, we beat Illidan, and oh my god, the Burning Legion are coming back, and it's mother effing killed Jaden. And so it was kind of a surprise. Now, me personally, I never did this fight when it was current or even attempted it in the Burning Crusade Classic. So I don't know what it's actually like to do it with its current content. But the fight was definitely epic. You can't deny that. It has multiple stages, lots of things going on. It's mother effing kill Jaden trying to come out of a huge portal on the floor as we're trying to literally beat him back into the portal and close it. And of course we don't kill him because he's mother effing kill Jaden. That will come later. We're not powerful enough. But the whole fight was literally just to try to stop him from completely coming through the portal, because if he got through the portal, it's game over. So I'm going to put him in A. Next, we have the Lich King. And I think the Lich King solidly goes, it's S tier. One of the coolest villains in all of Warcraft history. All Warcraft 3 was about Arthur's fall and becoming the Lich King. The Thrones and Throne was about Illidan trying to get to Arthas and kill him as the Lich King, and he fails. The undead are always around. We fought his lieutenant back in vanilla, but now we're going to finally go up against the big man himself. And then at least all throughout the expansion, we saw him. He's around doing things. So unlike Kil'jaeden, who just came out of nowhere, like, oh my god, it's Kil'jaeden as the final boss. We knew going into Wrath of the Lich King that the Lich King was going to be the final boss. And the fight itself was pretty epic. It even had a different phase in the final phase if you went on hard mode. You had the whole being sucked into Frostborn phase, so they had that. It had the phase where you had to stand on the edge of the platform and kill Az, but also kill the blue balls coming towards you. And I always remember that if the balls hit you, they literally just set you flying off the platform, which was kind of hilarious. I always love stuff in WoW that's just hilarious, and just the ball could have just booped you back 20 feet, and that would course knock you off the platform. But no, these orbs knocked you like 20,000 feet. Like, your guy just kept flying forever, which was just hilarious. Satisfying ending. Kind of sucks by all the retcons by the jailer later, but I think everyone agreed that the Lich King is the best final boss of any expansion. The next we come to Deathwing, which I think goes down here in D. He had a lot of build-up in Warcraft 2. Deathwing, where is he? What has he been doing? He finally comes out in Cataclysm, and then him literally bursting out of the earth literally causes earthquakes and literally changed the face of Azeroth, which they also just used as like a way to rebuild the old world and change it. So, but then you kind of got through the lore and learned the lore about him. We just learned that he was just really just driven insane by the old gods, and then he's literally corrupted by the old gods. The whole thing was Thrall becoming the savior, and all the dragons were like, Thrall, we were going to give you our power to defeat Deathwing. And the devs did say they wanted the Deathwing fight to feel epic. He's this huge dragon. How do we fight him? So we literally just, phase 1 is we fight on his back as we're literally ripping out his armor to damage him, which sounds cool on paper. In execution is probably goes down as one of the worst raid fights in WoW history, the spine of Deathwing. And then after we rip off all his armor, we find out that he's just really, after all the corruption of the old god, a giant octopus monster that we have to fight, which is basically one of the most boring end boss fights since Kel'Thuzad, which is literally the same fight over and over, but we lose a buff. You have to do it 5 times. Basically the same thing 5 times, but each time a dragon aspect is helping you, but after you have their help, you lose their buff. So it does have some options of how do you want to tackle it. Which buff do you want to use up first? Which buff do you want to save till last? But the fact is that the fight was the same. You attacked his toe, a big ad came out, you had to turn around and kill the little tentacle that spawned on his toe, and then go back to the toe while killing the tentacles. And rinse and repeat, but the fight, each time it got harder because you lost the buff. But all in all, Deathwing, D is for Deathwing. So now we come to Garrosh, which I found a hilarious picture for. And I almost want to put him in S, but I think I'm going to put him in high A. Mostly because if you really think about it, all these other end bosses up to this point were characters that were in the old real-time strategy games. But Garrosh was the first end boss that was a character created inside the world of Warcraft. He was first introduced in the Burning Crusade. He was involved in quest chains in Nagran, but then he started to take more of a role in Wrath of the Lich King as Thrall was mentoring him, and then Thrall let him take over as the new war chief of the Horde starting in Cataclysm, and then as the new war chief, he took the idea of trying to lead the Horde into victory a little bit too far. He believed that war chief, he should do whatever to make sure the Horde survives in this new cataclysm world created by Deathwing. And he just kept taking it too far. And he didn't care about the Alliance or really cared about people who didn't agree with his opinion. And even then into Mist of Pandaria, he's finding all these valuable things, artifacts on the continent of Mist of Pandaria. He stumbles across the heart of an old god there. And he decides to use that power to fuel him and his army. And it's not like Deathwing, who was corrupted and really controlled by the old gods. He was just using old god stuff to power himself up. But that's really a no-no. Anytime you power yourself up with old god artifacts, probably not going to lead to good things. But overall, I'll give Garrosh a high A, mostly because we saw the lore of him build up. The fight against him was pretty fun. It had a pretty awesome phase, and back then, which would be hard mode or heroic, where you saw the future of where he won, which you saw Stormwind in ruins, which a whole bunch of both Alliance and Horde leaders dead on spikes. So I gave Garrosh an A. So next is Archimon from Warlords of Draenor. I'm either going to throw him in B or C. The fight is fine. There's nothing wrong with the fight against Archimon. Kind of annoying, but there's nothing wrong with the fight. It had the mythic phase where he sucks you into the twisting nether. And then we ended up killing him there, which kills him for good. So we was actually surprised that we actually killed Archimon at the end. But the thing that brings it down is the lore leading up to this fight and the whole lore of Warlords of Draenor. And anytime you deal with time travel or whatever they want to call it, it just gets mucky and messy. And we go to this alternate Draenor, and the Legion's there because it's when the Legion first corrupted Draenor. But it's not like an alternate universe Legion. They kept saying, no, this is... They kept saying the Burning Legion exists in all dimensions or something. It's hard. So it was never really clear that was this our Archimon or Archimon from the past in this different timeline. in my headcanon, to figure out how Warlords of Draenor works was they basically made a copy of that planet in that specific timeline in our timeline. Like it just appeared out there. And so that's why when it appeared and it had some of the Burning Legion on it, they started communicating with the other Burning Legion, and they were actually communicating with our Burning Legion. That's why it brought our Archimon there. I actually don't know if my headcanon is actually correct, but that's the only way I could wrap my mind around how Blizzard that says this Archimon that we fight in this alternate Draenor is actually our Archimon, because the Burning Legion is the same in all dimensions. No, it doesn't make sense. So the lore of this brings it down. Oh, it almost slaps it down to a C, but I'm going to leave it as a B. So next is Argus. And I think I'm going to put him a solid B. I can't in good conscience put it as an A because he comes out of nowhere. All right? We're fighting the Legion in the Legion expansion. We actually kill Jaden in the instance before, so it's like, oh my god, we killed Jaden. Who the hell is the final boss going to be? Is it going to be Sargeras? But it's this creature Sargeras was working on. In the planet of Argus, it had its own world soul, and he was corrupting it with foul energy, and when it woke up, we fought it. So it comes out of nowhere, so I can't rate it an S or an A, but the fight was awesome. The idea of the fight, the idea of Argus himself, but the fact that it just comes out of nowhere, but it shows what could happen to the world soul of Azeroth if she ever comes corrupted, because we saw what happened to the world soul of Argus when he comes corrupted. But I do like the whole idea of the final phase of the fight. You actually had to have people die, and they had to do something while they were dead, and then they could run back to I think it was a tree that brought them back to life, and you only had so many uses of that, but death and dying in the fight was a mechanic used, so I always give it bonus points for that. Now we come to N'Zoth, the end of BFA. And I think it's fair that he goes in the C tier. Some people might even throw him down in D, but I'll give him a C. A lot of complaints about N'Zoth was they just felt like he was tacked on at the end of Battle for Azeroth. That there should have been a whole expansion about N'Zoth, because he was always in the... This is the guy that corrupted Deathwing. This is the guy that has been pulling the strings of a lot of things, and why doesn't he get his own whole expansion? But I give Blizzard credit that the whole idea of Battle for Azeroth, it starts off as the Horde and the Alliance battling for Azeroth, but at the end we figure out that N'Zoth is doing all this trickery in the background, and then it becomes the battle for Azeroth as the Horde and the Alliance has to once again come together and stop N'Zoth. So I would counter the argument that it was a whole expansion about N'Zoth, but he just wasn't front and center as Deathwing and Arthas, the Lich King, was. N'Zoth hides in the shadows and pulls the strings, and once we actually figure it out, he was the one pulling a lot of strings, and a lot of the events he was manipulating for him to get free. It kind of makes sense that he was the final boss of Battle for Azeroth. Problem is, the fight itself against him, it's kind of boring, really. Fight tentacles, get sucked into the other realm, stack up right. Compared to some of the other old god fights we had, Cthulhu, Yogg-Saron, he's the worst out of them all. So I actually bumped him down. He probably would be a B if his fight was better, but his fight was kind of kind of bland, really. Um, so now we have the jailer, who I guess gets the jailer rank. And I will give Blizzard one credit with the jailer. They tried something new and different of let's introduce the final boss of the expansion in that expansion and build him up, and then he's the final boss. He's not someone like Garrosh that was built up before or comes out of nowhere like Argus or all these other guys who are in the old games or built up throughout World of Warcraft. The expansion starts, we learn about this new threat, we learn about him through the expansion, and then you fight him at the end. The problem is the learning about him throughout. And the lore of him was he was pulling a lot of the strings way, way back. He's even messing with the Burning Legion, and we learned that what are they called? Starts with an N, whatever. But the idea was that the jailer was even more of a manipulator than like the Zoth, and he was pulling strings behind in the Burning Legion and with Arthas, the Lich King, and he was just been playing 5D chess in the World of Warcraft, while no one else knew they were playing chess against him. They made him too grand. If he was just like, hey, I don't like what's going on in the Shadowlands and I just want to, cause havoc, that's causing havoc in, the world of the living, that would have been fine. But the fact that they made him so like he's planting all these seeds to this ultimate goal of sucking the world soul of Azeroth out and and this is a plan he's been setting in motion for tens of thousands of years. They went a little bit overboard, Blizzard. You should have just kept him. He's just this one standoff villain. And once again, and my big complaint was a lot of the last expansions were, the expansion before we're stopping N'Zoth from destroying the world soul of Azeroth or corrupting it. Before that, it was Legion and Sargeras either wanted to destroy the world soul of Azeroth, and Deathwing wanted to destroy the world soul of Azeroth, or at least cause cataclysmic damage. And just to have another boss be like, I want to attack the world soul of Azeroth. It's just like, no, we've just done this 2 expansions in a row before. Why do we need to have a third guy that's being like, one wants to destroy it, one wants to corrupt it, one wants to use his power to remake the universe? Just leave the world soul of Azeroth alone for 5 minutes, Blizzard. So, there's my ranking of the end bosses of World of Warcraft. Do you guys agree with me? Disagree? Look forward to reading your guys' comments.